Lower back pain is one of the most common orthopedic complaints in the United States today. Whether it's stemming from sitting or just a more sedentary lifestyle, it's something that so many people are experiencing. But not only can the lower back itself be extremely uncomfortable, it can also be keeping people from exercising, which has a whole slew of other negative health consequences. On this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we're going to be exploring how you can go about exercising, specifically strength training, if you do have lower back pain. We're going to cue our introduction, and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we will be breaking down the strategies and tactics you need to know to build your health, strength, and function without feeling achy, sore, or injured.
We're your hosts, Julie and Charlie, the creators of the Exercise for Life membership. Your podcast starts now.
Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studio, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing this idea of lower back pain, and specifically how to exercise and do strength training if you have lower back pain. See, lower back pain is experienced by so many people, and often it keeps people from trying to exercise on a consistent basis, specifically doing strength training out of fear of making things worse, out of fear of injuring themselves. And I get it. With how mainstream fitness promotes doing exercise, that totally makes sense. But not exercising means you don't get the health benefits of exercise, and not strength training means you're not helping your muscles get stronger. In other words, you're kind of promoting your whole body getting weaker. So the question is, how can you go about doing your strength training? How can you go about doing your exercising in a way that will build the health and function of your body, build the strength of your muscles, but without furthering the lower back pain that you're experiencing? That's exactly what we're going to be discussing today. One disclaimer that I want to give right now is we need to make sure that you are cleared by a physician for exercise. All right, we're not giving medical advice on this episode, but as long as you've been cleared for exercise by your physician, then we have some things that we want you to keep in mind while you're doing your workouts.
You're right, Charlie. So I think that most people, when they have low back pain, which is probably the most common, as you said, orthopedic issue or pain area, at least in the United States right now, or really any area, there's kind of two ways that people generally navigate fitness. And I think that our old selves would have really highlighted this options really well. Let me explain what I'm talking about. So maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, if I had low back pain, probably what I would have done is not exercised. I would have just relaxed and said, I have low back pain. My back is hurting. And I actually did have a lot of low back pain. I'm not going to exercise and I'm just going to rest. And you would have been like, I have low back pain, but I identify as someone that exercises no matter what. So I'm just going to kind of thrash my body in the gym and just push through. Who cares?
That's
my
true.
back pain, my back hurts now. It's going to hurt later. What's the diff, right? So that's how most people come to their exercise when they have back pain. And so we have something different to offer you, because since then, Charlie and I have created the Exercise for Life principles, and we're going to apply them to your spinal area and your back area. And now I think when either one of us has back pain, we exercise like this anyways, but we would say, okay, this is actually the invite that I need to go do some strength training. This is the thing that is going to make the best case scenario for whatever is going on. Because we all live in a body that we're going to have aches and pains come up no matter what. No one is immune to it, but it's having the right tools to say hey, when my joint's hurting, my back's hurting, my knee's hurting, my hip's hurting, I know what to do to give my body the best possible chance to be as strong as possible and to be as functional as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say, knock on wood, for the most part, we feel really good day in and day out. But every once in a while where something does feel like a little bit achy or whatever, a few weekends back, our diet was really out of whack. I definitely noticed that my body felt different after that. And so I had to adjust my exercise accordingly and use it as a boost to my body instead of more of a challenge to my body. And so we want to kind of walk you through our thought process around that today and the things that we'd recommend you keeping in mind when when you're going and exercising. Yeah, we're talking about low back pain specifically today, but really these principles can be applied to if any area of your body is feeling, a little bit funky, as well as just how to keep your body feeling and functioning well overall. So that's kind of the theme of what we do during the rest of our podcast. Today, we're applying it to lower back pain because, like we've been saying, this is such a common issue. Okay, first of all, what you need to understand is so often when it comes to like doing exercise, and especially if somebody has lower back pain, there is this inherent fear of doing exercise that could involve the lower back or could involve the core overall. But the fact of the matter is you want to make sure that your low back, that your core muscles, and that your hip muscles are all strong and that they're all functioning well. And so that can often actually be a really good place to start, but how you go about doing it matters.
So the thing you need to know about the spine is that it's going to control what we generally will think of like quote unquote core exercises. So what does the core do? I think that's a really good place to start. So there are 3 like motions that the core does. And when you exercise, you have to make sure you're doing all 3. And it's not like every workout has to have all 3, but like somewhere in your programming, somewhere in your cycling through the exercises that you do, you're hitting all 3. Because if you miss one, then that motion and the muscles that are associated with that motion are now really vulnerable to when you swing a golf club. You're going to be more prone to throwing out your back. Or when you do that weird reach thingy in your car to give goldfish to your kids, it's going to leave
Who does that?
Who does that? That's not us. Come on. But that leaves those motions vulnerable. So that's why it's important. You got to know these 3 motions. So then hey, I need to strengthen all 3. And then we're going to teach you how to strengthen all 3. It's not just which exercises, but it's also how do you do the exercises, and the how is probably more important, but you also can't be leaving out giant motions. So the 3 are forward back. So think about like folding forward, folding back. A lot of people think of these ones for core, at least the forward one, because it's like forward would be like a crunchy motion, right? And a back motion, a side to side, and a twist, a rotation. So those are the 3 you need to know, and you need to be in your brain right now. Think about like, okay, what exercises do I do to strengthen those motions? Forward, back, side, side, and twist, twist. And when I say those, if you're saying, oh yeah, I do all of them, but like definitely can't ever do twist because, twist is what always throws out my back. Well, then stay tuned because the how you do them is going to be really important for you because you got to be doing these. You have to do all of them.
Now, the big thing with this is even though there are 3 motions that we're talking about as far as like forward, back, side to side, and twisting, it's actually going to go into 4 groups of exercises, okay? And so when you're thinking about the forward back, that's actually 2 separate groups of exercises. You're going to have the exercises that challenge the forward. You're also going to have the exercises that challenge the going backwards, the arching of the back. Then you're going to have the exercises that challenge the side to side and the exercise that challenge the twisting, okay? And so that's a lot of times where this confusion is like, okay, yeah, I know that, my spine goes forward, back. I know that my spine goes side to side. I know that my spine, twists and turns and stuff. But you're actually only challenging maybe 3 of the, doing exercises for 3 as opposed to all 4 that are needed, because that forward back is actually split into 2 where you're challenging the forward, which is what most people do, and you're not necessarily challenging the back as much, which is oftentimes what we see get left out, especially in a lot of the mainstream fitness programming.
I've even had clients come in and tell me, Julie, I don't want to do those spine back ones, the extension ones, because like I read in the magazine that those are not good for XYZ condition. Well, here's the thing. When there's like a brief article where it's like this small, tiny section in a magazine, they don't have time to walk through like how to do it. So if there is requiring steps of like, here's the specific ways of how to do this exercise, and if you don't do it this way, you're likely to injure yourself, then they just leave it out. They say, don't do that one. There's too many steps to learn how. But Charlie and I are of the mindset that you guys need to be educated on this stuff. We need to know, how are we going to strengthen your back muscles, because they're way too important to be leaving weak all the time, but there are a couple steps you need to know, and that's why we've created the Exercise for Life principles. When you apply these steps, we know that you are going to be safe, because it is exactly how you customize your own exercise to your body.
All right, so let's talk about these principles. The first thing that we bring up often, but definitely applies to this, is this idea of staying within your symptom-free range of motion. Now, when we're talking about doing strength training with back pain, you might be thinking, okay, but like my back hurts all the time. My back hurts no matter kind of what range I'm in or what position I'm in. Like, there is no symptom-free range of motion. And what I would say is, if that's the case and you've been cleared for exercise by your physician, then I would wonder if there are positions or motions where the symptoms feel worse, where it feels worse. So you have like your baseline level of however it feels. This is 3 in a row of me karate chopping the microphone. Watch it on YouTube. You'll get the details.
Oh my gosh.
So there's, your baseline of how your back is feeling, and then there are times when it feels worse. If you're saying, well, my baseline is that something is always there, okay, then the recommendation is we're going to stay in that spot where it feels like something is there, but it's not worse than that baseline. So I just want to make sure that is clear, and because if you're thinking, well, I don't have a range of motion, I don't have a position where I'm completely symptom free, so then this advice or exercise overall isn't for me. It's like, no. Then we need to kind of shift what the understanding of the principle, the understanding of the recommendation to what your baseline currently is, and make sure that when you're doing the exercise, it's not exacerbating things, it's not making things worse. You're not going into positions or doing motions where it's feeling more uncomfortable than just as it is at your baseline.
That's right. This one's so important because most of the times people are like, okay, if I do back extension or I do trunk twist, it always hurts my back. It's always going to hurt my back, so I just don't do it. That's a big problem. So the solution to this is you have to stay in a pain-free range of motion, no matter how big or small it is. A lot of times people feel like, oh, if it's so small, then like, is it doing anything? Yes, it is. So the 2 things you got to look for. So let's say you walk around with no back pain, but like it's like there. Like sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's flared up, sometimes it's not. You don't want any additional pain when you exercise. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're looking for. I'm pain-free, and when I do this, I feel muscle squeezing, like I feel the work, but I don't feel pain. So you always want to stay in a range where there's no pain. If you feel pain, you just stop the range, whether it's halfway through the range, whether it's the last inch, whether it's most of the range. You only get to do a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of the range. And then the same thing applies with what Charlie says. Let's say you walk around with back pain all the time. You're like, it's always there. So then you're monitoring it. Like, when I do this exercise, is my back pain still just there and it's like the normal, and I do this and nothing changes? Or does it get worse as I go? So you're looking for any time that the pain changes.
Yes.
Right? That's your body giving you a signal, hey, this is enough, don't do this. So we need to listen to that. So that's step 1. Pain-free range of motion, or I guess we could edit it for this specific podcast, like no increased pain when you do range of motion. So you're looking for the range of motion where you're just staying at your normal baseline.
Absolutely. And so then the next thought is, once you find kind of where you can move and it doesn't increase the symptoms at all, we want to make sure that while you're doing that motion, that you are very slow, that you are moving super, super, super slow. This is the second principle that we want to make sure that we get down, is while you're doing your core motions of, folding forward, of arching back, going side to side and twisting and turning, not only are you staying within your symptom-free range, or your range of motion is not additive to the symptoms, is not increasing the symptoms, you also are making sure that you're moving really, really slowly. And this is crucial, especially when we're talking about trying to strength train with lower back pain, because as soon as we start moving fast and we start using momentum to create motion, that is when we can really start to stress out different areas of our body, especially the low back. And so it's really of the utmost importance that when you are doing your core strengthening exercises, that you're moving really slowly.
Yeah, and when you move slow, you're going to also be able to better define where is my pain-free range of motion, like step 1. So make sure you're doing both of those. You're moving slowly and you are staying in a pain-free range of motion. The next tip is that you have to define what's going to move and what's going to not move. Okay, so we usually call this removing non-moving parts, or some people like to call it, well, isn't that called form? Well, we don't like to really say form because then that sounds like everyone's squat should look like this, everyone's crunch should look like this, because we know that it's not a one size fits all. So whenever you do an exercise, think about it. Parts of your body are going to not move. Like if I do a crunch laying on my back with my knees bent, I'm going to assume my knees are not going to move, but my core, my center is going to move. My torso is going to move. So you want to establish those parts and then continue to do that, meaning don't break don't start moving a part that shouldn't be moving. Like, don't start launching my legs to get more and more reps as I move through. As soon as you have to break what part is moving and what part is non-moving, then the exercise is done. So that's part of respecting and saying, hey, I'm trying to really work this one area, but in a specific way so that I'm able to really strengthen and really increase the function, versus saying, I'm just trying to get reps done. I'm trying to get as many as possible. I'm trying to feel the burn as least as possible. So make sure you're defining and keeping your moving parts and defining and keeping your non-moving parts, which are kind of need equal attention, really.
Absolutely. And then finally, you want to make sure that while you're doing the exercise, you're focused on the muscle squeeze. Now, this can be particularly difficult if you are experiencing some kind of negative sensation, some kind of pain or anything like that. The thing about it is, though, is when you are focused on the squeeze, you are more likely to be moving slowly. You're more likely to be respecting your range of motion. You're going to pick up more quickly on when you start to get to the edge of the part of the motion where your body says, don't go any further because it's going to start to be more uncomfortable, or because you can't move any further, you need to, fling or use momentum. You're going to be more likely to have your non-moving parts of your body stay non-moving and just move the parts of your body that you're wanting to move. In other words, you're going to be more likely to be able to hit all of the other 3 exercise for life principles when you focus on squeezing your muscles while you're doing the exercise. And so then the question becomes, okay, well, how do you establish like that mind-muscle connection, right? And so a lot of times what people try to do is they will start doing the exercise, they'll start doing the reps, and then they will start to like feel the burn after the while, and they're like, okay, yeah, like now I'm feeling my muscles. And we say, nope, it's too late at that point. We recommend that you start by making that mind-muscle connection. So whatever area of your body you're going to be trying to work with the exercise, whether it's a crunch or you're trying to, work your abs as you're folding forward, or, the sides of your torso, like your obliques or something like that, while you're going side to side, or, something along, you can work the obliques as well while you're twisting and turning, or your low back while you're doing extensions. You want to try to feel those different areas of your body squeezing, those different groups of muscles squeezing before you go in and start loading it and before you start moving and doing the exercise. So make that mind-muscle connection and then use that to drive the motion of the exercise, keeping your focus on the squeeze the entire time.
Yeah, the focus on the squeeze is huge. And this is actually one that's really difficult for people to grasp, especially if they've had chronic or acute pain in any area. But I have a really good analogy for this. At least I think it's a good one. But okay, so think about this. If I ate, we're just going to use my stuff. If I ate chocolate cake, I would say, this tastes good. It feels good for me to eat this chocolate cake, right? If I ate scallops, I hate scallops, by the way, I would say, these taste very bad. I think I need to spit it out. The taste is so bad. And if I tasted nothing, I would say I taste nothing, right? There's just nothing happening there. So what's interesting when it comes to the body is like when we feel sensations in an area, we usually like to label them as bad. Because think about it. If you woke up in the morning and you didn't feel any joints, you didn't feel any muscles, you would say, I feel good. Like the absence of feeling is feeling good. That's like saying I didn't eat anything and so I'm not eating anything, right? Versus saying like, I'm eating chocolate cake and I think that's good. Versus in the body, the absence of sensation is what feels good for people. What's difficult is when we have joint pain, we start realizing or labeling sensations are bad, right? If I feel stuff, it's bad. But when we exercise, it's difficult because when we exercise, we have to feel our body. We have to feel the squeezing. And when our brain is already programmed to saying like, if you feel anything in your low back, it's going to be really so bad. But really, when you squeeze your muscles and you're trying to feel them in a contraction type way and you are feeling that, that's like your body getting to taste chocolate cake. You don't want to spit that out. It's delicious. It's what your body needs, chocolate cake. So you have to kind of reprogram a little bit, especially if you've been avoiding sensations for a long time. When you're exercising and trying to feel muscle squeeze, you're trying to differentiate between Julie's chocolate cake and Julie's scallops. And just know that what my brain normally tells me is good is no sensation, because we don't normally want to feel stuff. So when you exercise, you're like looking for the squeeze, which is good for your body. That's like eating the chocolate cake. Okay?
So
It made all the sense, right?
it did. I appreciated that. All right. So where we teach you to apply this is throughout every single workout within the Exercise for Life membership. I
Yeah.
mean, all of them, we apply these Exercise for Life principles to make sure that you are staying safe and that your workouts are effectively challenging your muscles without risking injury, without flaring up your joints. But one program in particular where we really discuss this as it pertains to the core is the core and cardio program. We break down like the 4 key exercise motions that need to happen with the core. Again, challenging going forward, challenging going back, challenging the side to side, and challenging the rotation, and do so in a whole variety of ways, but making sure that you are applying these 4 Exercise for Life principles every single time we do those exercises. So if you want to get in on that core and cardio program as well as the rest of the Exercise for Life membership, all you have to do is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/membership. We do have a couple options for joining, whether you do the monthly option or you do the premium annual option. Both will get you access to the core and cardio program as well as all the other programs within the Exercise for Life membership. So again, that's www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/membership.
Hey, and I was wondering, have you guys been enjoying our podcast? If you've been listening for a while and maybe you've been, you listen to us every Wednesday, we would absolutely love it if you would take a few minutes to rate and review us on whatever platform you like to listen to. One thing that we are learning is that the more reviews that we have, especially if you like listening to us anyways, the more that we're able to reach more people and the more we're able to get killer podcasters on our podcast because we like to bring you guys amazing interviews. So if you wouldn't mind, if you are a fan, go give us a rating and review. We would greatly appreciate it.
So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is experiencing lower back pain and has been avoiding exercising because of the lower back pain that they're experiencing? Share this episode with them so they can understand that once they are cleared for regular exercise, there are some principles they can implement within their workouts to help increase the likelihood that their body feels much better after they work out and decrease the likelihood that the exercise becomes too stressful for their lower back and for their body. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Like Julie just said, leave us that rating review. Not only does it help other people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and looking for information on health, it also helps us recruit phenomenal guests for our show. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
Charlie, I really didn't know what program you were going to say to highlight this. I figured you'd say core and cardio, but the principles we talked about today are in every single freaking workout program in our membership. So anyways, we'll see you guys in the membership and we'll see you guys on the review page.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.